honest, I never aspired to be a graphic designer ever. It just happened to me by accident actually, because since I was a child, I always loved art, art in general, and I was always good at it. And when it came to choosing a course for graduation, I was clueless. And my parents were actually very worried. They didn't think I would end up doing anything in life. And so I picked bachelor's in mass media as my course because I didn't know what else to do.
Mhm.
So I just did that. And obviously, I'm glad I did it because I've met like the nicest of people, my best of friends during that course. And even after the course ended, I didn't know what to do. And I always loved fashion, so I decided to try fashion styling. I didn't like it. I decided to go and travel for an entire year. I was only traveling. And finally, when I came back, my parents said, you really need to do something. So I said, okay, I think I'll just do graphic design. I'll do a small course and I'll see. So I enrolled into a diploma in graphic and web design, and I just happened to like it. And as it was literally, I had not even finished the course, and I got a call from a friend working at a very good brand right now. Should I name brands? Is that okay?
Nothing is off
So,
unless you have a confidentiality agreement. You can
oh
go
no,
ahead.
no, no. This was long back. So there's a brand called Pipa Vela. A lot of people might know about it. In fact, it's a $1 million funded startup now. So she was working there and she asked me, do you want to intern here? I said, sure. I went there, I got selected, I started working. Before I could even complete my internship, I got another call from through Behance. You must be knowing about the platform. I just put up some of my work there, and I got a call from another agency, and they asked me to come in and give an interview. So I just went, and I got hired. So that's how I got my first actual job. And I worked there for almost 2 years. So he was actually my mentor. My boss over there is the one who taught me everything that I know today. And yeah, as soon as I quit that job, I landed another job. And I worked in the digital space for 2 months. I didn't like it. I quit. And then I decided to never ever do a job again. And I've been freelancing. Actually, I started freelancing from the time I started interning. I've always freelanced, even when working with a full-time job.
Well, well, we'll come back to. I love what you said. It gives me, I'm a little over 40, and when I chat with people like you, it gives me so much peace when I get a little distraught about the fact that our youth is not going anywhere. But that's a discussion for a day. But it's very inspiring to see so many of you. That's fantastic. But I'll hold a couple of questions. Let's quickly get Pragya's intro, and then what got her started. Let's see what her story is, and there's always an amazing story behind every person. So Pragya, over to you.
True.
So mine is actually, it's all about motherhood. I'm a finance graduate, was working as an analyst, had been. When I was working as an analyst, I did some writing assignments. I was good with language always. So when I had babies, I was in the sabbatical period. I was kind of offered a gig, which was cloud. And I had to write something about cloud, which was like, I don't know anything about it. But then, the internet. So kind of tried doing it, and it turned out well. But then using that, I actually thought of, because it was very interesting. I could manage my, the balance was very good between the house and the work.
Freelance successful.
I had a newborn.
Freelancers bro.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the next thing I did was, use that thing which I, the thing I did as my portfolio and uploaded it on Upwork. And anybody who knows Upwork, it's not really easy to make a profile over there. So even back then, almost 8 years back, I still had to struggle to, build that profile. So it happened, and I uploaded that. And next thing I know that, somebody sent me an invite because they were looking for a fresher. And
you were looking for a fresher.
Yeah, they were looking for a fresher. They wanted somebody who has some knowledge of the cloud. So I had uploaded, and the money was not very good, but then they were looking for a fresher. Okay. And I was a fresher on Upwork by all means. So it kind of my profile kind of, the work I had done, they kind of liked it. They gave me, so I got this list of questions, and there was this question number 3 where you asked me the most surprising moments. So my most surprising moment was this, that so they asked me to do a test, and usually you're not expected to get a paid test. So when I received that offer, it just said something like $8 or something. This is what I saw actually. So I was like, okay, very happy, because I'm still at home. It's kind of a gig, and it's still $500. It's not bad. And then I went back just to see the contract again, to learn the instructions that I given, and I saw it's $80. So I was like, okay, it's 5,000 rupees, not bad. Okay, I'm really happy. So that was kind of a very big epiphany to me, because while I'm trying to manage everything, I work for probably 3 days, 4 days, and I get $5,000, not bad, and I'm still good at home. And that just made me very happy, because it was still a test assignment. So technically, they asked me how many hours would you take, and I said 8 to 10 hours, and kind of multiplied. They gave me $80. I finished that assignment, worked out well. I kind of got that gig, which was, again, it was like kind of getting me around 70 to 80 hours a month. So, that became a good money, but it happened eventually. But then, I still can believe, like in that epiphany that, sitting in my home from my computer, I got those $80 that made me feel like, wow, I mean, this is possible. I can do it right from my desk, right from my dining table. This is possible. So, so it just happened from there. And then, I kept on, like, of course, there are a lot of mistakes I did. I mean, yours being a payment protection platform, I even have a story that I got scammed. I have done all the wrong things, all the foolish things. But then, it's the process. And I'm very happy, because, it is kind of a lot of, the autonomy that you get with freelancing is amazing. So, especially when you want to balance that, so, all those things that, you can sit next to a beach and work. Yes, you can. That's a possibility. But then, yes, there are things like, when you're a freelancer, there are a lot of expectations, because every time you get an assignment, it's the last minute assignment. Because they've tried with agencies and stuff, and now they're like, nothing's working. So like, can you give me this in 2 days? This is like the most common thing we hear. So yeah, I mean, there is a kind of balance that you have to maintain. Lots of cons with amazing pros. So yeah, we'll talk about it later, but that's how it started. Mine started with my motherhood. And I really think it's a blessing.
Very interesting. The funny thing is, I'm not sure how factual or how accurate the statistic is. When we started building Vouch earlier this year, maybe I think a little over 13 months ago last year, we did some research and realized that 60% of the world's freelancers are from India. Okay. 60%. So, and the other aspect about freelancing, at least not everybody is, at one point in time, it was having a call center job and you had a persona, you had a voice, Mangala became Mary, that sort of stuff. But today you can keep all of those identities. So that's been a big one, right? And the funny thing is, there's also another perception that freelancing is all about maybe temporary gigs and doesn't really pay well. And for my podcast this past week, I think 4 days ago, I interviewed a guy called Raghu Bharat, who's started a freelancer matching platform called CrewScale. And they started with 120 people way back in 2016. And today they have over 65,000 freelancers. What they actually do is, and what they do is not similar to what Upwork or Fiverr does. They do very high-end people. So you could be a cloud engineer working for someone like Google and drawing maybe $50,000, but they'll actually double that and give you the life that you want. And it came from his own experience. When he sold his startup in 2015, he freelanced for a whole year. And in a single year, he traveled to 43 countries and made $250,000. So when I heard his story, I was very fascinated. So awesome. And I remember this, one of my favorite quotes in life is John Lennon's, life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans, right? So the thing about freelancing is you can freelance when life is happening to you. So
And I'm sorry, I'm
no
cutting you.
problem.
The thing is with freelancing, which I really appreciate, is it gives you that balance, you know. So if I don't want to work on a certain Wednesday morning, I don't work. But then if I have to finish an assignment and give it on Monday, probably I work through the Sunday, and that's all right. So I don't block my 9 hours in a certain place.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like probably I would like to flirt with a couple of companies, then just be loyal to one organization, learn more things, work with random teams. It's exciting, it's fun, and I don't know, I also feel my best comes out because it's very challenging. When you work in an office, you work on a certain profile, that's it. This is your job. But when you're a freelancer, they'll ask you random things, and they want you to be a resource who can answer it all.
Right.
So there's a lot of learning that comes along with it, because I wasn't a trained copywriter. I think I learned everything, so I mean, I don't know if this is the right thing to say, but a lot of my clients were kind of my guinea pigs also, because I was trying things, and for as long as you're honest and you're willing to put in, and you know that you can bring results, and you will go walk that extra mile to bring results. I think this really is an amazing way to bring in value for organizations. And even their thing is also like less keeping somebody on the payroll and stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's a great thing, but yeah, there are lots of cons as well.
We'll come to the cons. Karuna, I want to go to you. And you said you've been freelancing ever since you started. So it's sort of been a sideshow when you had a job. Would that be an accurate description?
Yeah, that would be accurate, because I started out in 2013, and by 2016 I had already done 3 jobs.
Okay.
So
3 jobs. Okay.
yes, I mean, obviously the last one was only 2 months, so
Right.
I just tried it because I wanted to try the digital space, but I didn't enjoy it, and I felt like there wasn't there anything to learn. What I had to learn, I think I just learned in the first 2-3 weeks. Then I just kind of pushed myself to be there, but I couldn't do it after a certain point, so I just left.
So while you were doing that original job as well, you were freelancing on the side.
Yes.
Oh, that's very
From
interesting.
2013, from the time I started interning, or I
Right.
would say literally while I was even doing that short course that I did, as I started learning the software, I started freelancing.
Why? What prompted you to do that?
Because the thing is that as soon as you meet people, you tell them what you do, I don't know, somehow people just ask, oh, do you think you can do this for me? Do you think you can design a small logo for me? I mean, I've done a lot of free work also, obviously, and I've worked for peanuts also, but that's how I built my portfolio.
Have the peanuts become coconuts now?
They become watermelons now.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So we'll come to the financial angle in a second. But when you started out, I know one of the things about working out of an Indian ethos is the amount of quantity you get, right? You get a lot of quantity, but you need to sift through all of that to get to quality, right? And that also means that you have to follow a certain path to establish your own identity, your own quality, and adhere to a certain style. What were some of the things that you did in the beginning to establish that, hey, you know what, if I want something like this, I'll go to Karuna? Because in a freelancer's world, while platforms are all there now, they've all evolved.
Yeah.
Most of the time, the work comes from word of mouth and referrals, right? But
Sure.
that means you also have to establish yourself. How did you go about doing that in the beginning?
Okay, so since this webinar is for freelancers and we are talking about how they're supposed to start out and not make the mistakes that we've made, I would say that initially I just tried to take up whatever came my way. To be honest, because the thing is, I think it's very important to network when you're working alone, because how else, you have to be your own marketer, right? So I just had to take up whatever came my way because I knew that these people, if they like, even if it's something small, they'll always go back and tell other people. And that is literally how I got my work, because I knew nothing about, these platforms at that time. And I mean, I still kind of on my own got to know about Behance, and I created that profile, and I actually got a lot of work from there because, it's a global platform for people. But to be honest, it's from my circle where I got all my initial work. And I literally took up everything that came my way. So I mean, this is my advice to people starting out, that don't be picky in the beginning. Do not be picky. You can become, I mean, I'm picky now, but those first few years, I just did everything that came my way.
So don't look for a Dar kind of a movie, do a Raju Ban Gaya Gentleman to start with. Right? Okay.
Yes.
And the financial part, right? And I remember some time ago, a friend of mine, when it comes to content and when it comes to work, for instance, take my podcast, for example. Initially, when we put stuff out, I never really had any apprehension if it was going to be discovered or not. I'd been putting out content for a very long time, although it was not in public forums, and we built a lot of stuff. And a friend of mine said, "Hey Krishna, the thing about work is, even after you completed it, it's still out there. That's evidence of nobody's going to look at the price tag or whether there was a price tag that was paid or not for that work." So it sort of reinforces what you're saying, that take whatever you can to establish yourself, because work is out there. There is no label around that work which says, okay, this was paid work or this was unpaid work, right? But was there a point at which, how did you end up discovering that, hey, this is exactly how I should price, this is what I should ask, and this is how this can become valuable for me? How did you go through that journey?
Okay. So obviously, initially I was clueless because, when I would get a logo to design, I had no idea what I'm supposed to charge. Like, absolutely. And the thing is, I was also doing a job. So if I would ask people at work, for advice, they wouldn't give me the right advice. They would intentionally tell me to underquote. And obviously, this I realized much later. But there were such people also, who used to misguide and say, charge 5,000 for a logo. Obviously, now I am not going to do a logo for 5,000, but this is the kind of advice I've also received. But then I did a lot of research even online and, asking how much should I be charging and etc. How should I go about it? How many options should I give? All that. So I just learned along the way. And eventually you realize your value, because when you see the kind of work which is outside, what work other people are doing, and then you always ask that how much did you pay for this logo, for this type of work, how much did you pay? So you at least know how much people are willing to shell out for what kind of work, and then you kind of understand that, okay, my work is so much better than that. If she can get or he can get paid this much for this, I know I can get paid much more for mine.
There's an old interesting thing about pricing. Not everything, people think there are only certain contexts in which you do a bargain, right? In the Indian context, now we have fixed price stores, we have malls, we have these brands where everything is fixed, you don't have a bargain, right? So, and then people think that's the only, when we are buying grocery shopping with the roadside vendor, we think that's the only place we are doing bargain. But unbeknownst to us, in a lot of places, we are actually negotiating. When we go back and forth, that is actually a negotiation. It's not a bargain, but it's a negotiation. It's a discussion. And there is a golden rule that what not to do is not to name your number first. If somebody asks you, and an old trick, I personally, because I know the trick or because I know the tactic, when I want to buy something or engage with someone for some services or products, if the first question they ask me is what is your budget, it completely turns me off. But when I am on the other side, That's the first question I'm going to ask. what is the willingness to pay? Because when you have a certain willingness to pay, that will tell you that you have so much either cushion, or is this contractor person the right person to work with or not, right? It answers a lot of questions for you, right? So I can understand with design. The funny thing is, this is a question for Pragya, because when I've looked at research, when it comes to content writing and copywriting, there is so much abuse online, right, Pragya? There is, people think, oh, these are just words, as if, they have a magical ability to come up with words, and I will give you X, you give me Y, and then, it's taken care of. And a lot of them don't get paid either. We see that when it comes to people in copywriting and content writing, the number of payment defaults and frauds are extremely high, and the abuse seems to be high as well. Pragya, has your experience been different, and how did you go about finding the financial angle?
So, to be honest, I totally believe don't work for free. Never work for free. But I have this, so even when I started, I was like, I will quote what is the industry standard. So maybe 10 hours, I should get paid for 10 hours. And maybe because I'm new, I don't know it, I'll work 40 hours or maybe 30 hours, but I will charge what is the standard fee, which I have done. Now, today, probably for the same gig, 10-hour gig, I will probably work just 2 hours and finish it and still charge 10 hours. So I believe that I will work hard, but I will not charge less. So that was my rule, and I never charged less. I was never, I was very clear. Somehow I always knew from where you start, that is where your journey begins. So today I start charging $5. Next day I can't tell them that you have to give me, $20. So when I started, even then, back 8 years back, I still started with $10. I was very clear. Rest assured, if you're charging high, you're going to get challenging assignments. You will have to work. So you have to decide you just want to do something, or you want to work for an organization or a person who really understands the value of your work. They are going to be demanding. They are not going to be easy. They are going to push you. You will have to work hard. So that was my rule. I was ready to work hard, but I will not get paid less. I was very clear on this. So yeah, that was the money part. The one moment when I got scammed was, so I'm a single parent. I run my entire house with freelancing. My children go to international school. There's a lot of expenses. I can run all of that through freelancing. But then, yeah, I was willing to work hard. But there was one crisis situation in my life when I was, so this was this assignment where, it was an interesting assignment, blah, 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 blah. But then, Upwork takes a certain amount of fee, and which I was like, so in the negotiation, we decided that, let's, share that fee half off. And, let's just do it off Upwork, which I was like, I was very reluctant, but I decided, okay. And I worked for an entire week, and probably, it was around, I think it was $500 or something, the entire week's bill, which I got scammed because, there was no payment protection. It was just a verbal thing that you get into, and, you want to trust somebody because, you want to trust somebody because of a lot of situations. So this is one thing, so no matter how interesting it looks, and just know when it's freelancing, when it's internet, too good to be true is something you should run away from. You should absolutely run away from. You should know that when you're generating a value, that is when you're getting paid. If anything looks too good to be true, you need to check. You need to, really, really vet that because these scenarios, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say anything is possibility, but 99% of times it's not going to happen. So it's best to be a little on the safer side. So that is how it all started. About the money part, as I said, I was very clear that I'm not going to work for less. And that is how I ended up working on good assignments, good projects. I had to work hard, but I got really good. And now today I have some of my clients with whom I'm working for the last 5 years. And it just because, you grow up together, they will value you if you're willing to work hard, and if you're ready to, probably get up at 2 a.m. and finish it by 5 a.m. and give it to them because they have to present it next day. So, this is a lot about freelancing. You connect a relationship with your clients. And I don't have a portfolio, to be honest. I never needed one. I'm like, probably for last 5 years, I'm just working on recommendation. I don't have any portfolio. Somebody asked me portfolio. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I don't have anything. Probably I'll send you a couple of links. I never needed a portfolio. So I think, in the inside the soul has to be ready to work hard. And the idea should be to actually create value for your client. It cannot be about just money or just getting your free time and things like that. You genuinely have to be interested in the project, interested in you need to be vested in your client. And that's how freelancing works. I mean, honestly, I don't have a portfolio. I never needed one. And I really believe that even money part, you can always talk, you can always negotiate. And one thing, as you said, it puts you off, it puts me off. And I'm like, this is my standard statement that, if you start negotiating, I'll start losing my motivation. You want a half-hearted work, I don't mind doing it. But the problem is now that I just have 24 hours. I'd rather choose a client who's willing to pay me. I can't work for everyone, right? I have a certain number of clients that I can work with, and I want to give my best. So even there are times when somebody wants to hire me for a retailership and they don't have work. It goes on for 1 month, second month, third month, then I don't want to work with them. I'm like, I'm not just here for money, it's for my learning also, for my growth also. So, thank you for the free money, but, I really need to put in, because I have to save those hours when I'm not doing work. So it has to be good for them, good for you. It cannot be just about autonomy or money. You should be driven by learning. You should be driven by creating some genuine value. So that's how it all started. And yes, be very careful when it's a too good to be true kind of a situation. You never know when you get scammed.
So in some sense, what not to do is, at some point in time, if you're in it for the long haul, right? I see a lot of people who do it for a very short time, and that's for the money. But in some sense, if you want it to be a good vocational or a choice for the longer term, do not be in it only for the money. If you're in it for the value, you're definitely going to get what you expect, and then some more, right? So interesting. Karuna, what have been some things that haven't worked for you?
You mean like in what sense?
Anything, an approach, a particular outlook, a particular engagement model, or where you were saying, okay, I'm going to work with these sorts of clients only, and then it turned out that sort of projects were not the ones that created value, where then you eventually decided, okay, I'm going to do only these sorts of things. So therefore, these are the things that I have to absolutely avoid and say, this is a strict no.
Okay, so as Pragya said, she said only take up projects that, create value for you and for the client. I agree with that. But this is for me, obviously, and it only applies to me. I do believe in that, and I do take up projects which excite me. But I also take up projects sometimes if the money is really good. I just do it because, as a freelancer, there are a lot of times, when you don't have consistent income. It happens sometimes. And then I just take up the project because if it's your bread and butter, you have to do it. So few projects are like that, but I generally do prefer doing things only which interest me. Initially...
sorry to interrupt you. I think I can give you a live example of a freelancer that I hired last year. And I think what Pragya is trying to say, I can relate completely to it. She's an exceptional programmer, great programmer. She can do great work, but everything that she does has a money component or a money value associated with it. The way she quotes, the hours that she talks about, at some point in time, relationships and the outcome that your client is expecting is important. Where people lose the equation is which is where Pragya's the value. Last year, there was this whole product rewrite that we wanted to start. And going into it, the freelancer, I had made everything clear to the freelancer, the status of the current project, what we wanted out of it, how much budget was available for it. What she ended up doing was she went completely through the budget and she missed 4 or 5 things. Eventually, she came back and blamed us for not giving her a complete brief. And these were all very mistakes or oversights because it is not effort. I'm actually looking for an outcome. Now, when I go back to her, and after that, we spoke about a couple of situations, and every point in time, the whole thing would start with, okay, let's look at the budget first. Let's look at the money first. And then it would start with economics first. And I think it would be wrong to say that you shouldn't do it for the money, because ultimately freelancing, established freelancers will have some predictability to it, but even they have downtimes, right? But having money as the dominating and deciding criteria for every piece of work, and today so much so that I recommended her to a couple of people, and when somebody discusses her, I tell her, no, I like her work, but I just hate her attitude, and she has no client ethos. And a good freelancer is one who realizes it's the reason the golden goose story, we read it for a reason, right? You don't want all the eggs on one day, and sometimes we forget that when we grow up. So I think that's what Pragya is suggesting. I have had first-hand treatment of that, so therefore.
I agree with her. I do agree with her, because there are projects where I would say, like, she's saying that she's very clear that, if she quotes, if it's a certain price, she wants to get paid that, she won't do it in less, which is great.
Right.
But I will be honest, even to this day, there are certain projects where I know that the client can't afford what I'm going to charge.
Yeah.
I just know it. So, but if I really like what they're offering in terms of work, I do it. Because if I still quote what I quote and I know they can't pay me that amount, they're not going to give me the work, obviously. But if I really want to do it, I'll do it in that price because I like the work.
No, I agree with you.
It works both ways.
I was just trying to add a little more color to what she was saying, because fundamentally, a couple of years, actually not even a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, I'm a chartered accountant by background. We're building a fashion boutique discovery platform where independent designers. We came to a point where quite a few brands wanted us to do photography. I had never trained myself to be a professional photographer, and I did it purely. If I tell you the money I charged for it, you'll actually laugh, because it was such peanuts, and a lot of it was included for a lot of other services as well. And when today I don't put out. I've seen much lesser photographers who, or rather people who have a lot more experience, do maybe half a job as what I have done. Not a brag, but when I share that portfolio, I never have any attribution. People come back and say, who shot these pictures? And then they're all so, and we did very basic street scenes. And each shoot, an average shoot, when we delivered, a professional shoot would be about 3 lakhs. And we would have spent only 1/10 of the price, including the cost of edit and all of that. And so I did it purely because of the love for the work that I had at that point in time. And today, if I put out that portfolio on Behance or any of those places, I'm bound to get 25 gigs unsolicited, but I don't do it. But I'm very happy for it. So awesome. So that's terrific value to have. But what has been a value where you've been taken advantage?
So people who take advantage of you are generally known people, at least in my experience, because they just take it for granted that, in fact, there have been times where they don't even want to pay. Like, they don't even ask you how much you will charge. It's just taken for granted that you'll just do it for them. Friends and family, especially. Yeah. So, I've done it. It's
and especially if it's services, there's nothing physical, so it doesn't cost money.
So, it doesn't cost, obviously, because you are not putting in money into the laptop, while doing the work.
Right.
So,
what's been your most surprising moment in the idea journey? A couple of surprising moments, positive and negative.
Okay, so the first proper job that I got, I mentioned it earlier. So while I was interning at Deepa Bella, I got approached on Behance, and I had literally just uploaded some of my work like a week before. I already got an email from my ex-boss, And he said, we've just started and we are based here in Bombay. So if you're interested, just come in and meet us. So I ignored it first because I was just wondering who is this random person. And I was happy with what I was doing at Viva Bella. But after I got bored over there with what I was doing, I went back to that, email, and I was looking at it and I said, okay, you know what? Let me just call this guy. So I called him up and he remembered me obviously, and he said, can you come in for a meeting? So I went in for a meeting, and the office they're literally, when he said we just started, they had literally just started. It was getting painted when I entered. And I was the first person for an interview over there. So it was just him and me. And it ended up being reverse, where I was interviewing him. And I was asking him, can you show me your work? Why should I work with you? And he started showing me all his work, and then I started seeing one projects and saying, okay, yeah, this is interesting. Okay, I'll come and work. And I was the only employee in that office for 2 years. And he ended up being my mentor. Like, I learned everything I know from him. He's a very well-known photographer also, apart from being a designer. And I went on shoots with him. I did everything possible.
Amazing. So let's do maybe 3-4 minutes of rapid fire. Pragya, what not to do in branding?
What not to do?
In branding. Personal branding.
As in personal branding.
Yeah.
What not to
rapid
do?
fire, 4-5 things. No thinking.
Okay. So probably don't talk a lot about, produce work and not just client names. Show some tangible results when it comes to, if you can give numbers, if you've written a copy, how much did you go, don't just give me give me something solid. Don't give me random things like is client ke liye kaam kiya hai bhai. I mean, show me that.
Impact.
Show me if it really worked. Like, did you, how much percentage did it increase when you changed the copy?
Okay.
Show me something when you're trying to brand yourself personally. It is not about your photographs. It is not. So one nice professional picture, that's it. We don't want to know that if you're actually sitting on a beach and working. Look sincere. I mean, please look sincere. Don't try to just go on showing off that I have a cool life. No, please be sincere, because you will get hired for your sincerity and for generating some genuine value. So yes, this is it. I mean, no holiday pictures, no big name droppings, no just bragging about what you've done. Show some tangible results. Tangible copy that I can see if you've used a copywriting formula in that, if you've done something, explain what you've done. And yes, avoid those holiday pictures.
But one thing, what do you mean by holiday pictures? Who sends you holiday pictures?
Yeah, I've seen people just putting up on their websites about just trying to look cool. Trust me, if you want to work with sincere organizations, get some really good projects on which which is because people are doing serious business over here. Somebody wants to, if you want to get good money, it's for serious business. You're not going to get good money for just writing some tweets. So look sincere and try to come up with sincere stories and not just brag about it. So
don't be splashy.
Sorry?
Don't be splashy.
So, you probably will inspire
flashy, I think.
a freelancer, but I don't know if you're going to get good work out of it. So you also have to decide what you want to become. A wannabe celebrity, or you want some genuine work. You want to get some genuine work, because people who give genuine work, they have eyes too. They have discerning eyes. Rest assured.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe somebody gets inspired. Well, looks cool. I want to be this person, and I'll start freelancing. So you have to decide what are your goals.
I'm surprised you didn't mention anything about attitude. It's sort of implicit in what you mentioned, but.
Yeah.
Attitude should be always to discuss the value you have generated as a freelancer. Right from my dining hall, this is what I've generated for a client.
Yeah.
That should be the attitude. It shouldn't be, don't try to look cool. It doesn't really help. Probably someone else will get inspired to look cool.
Yeah.
You want to get good work with good organizations. Really want clients who will be like, probably delaying their launch date because they want you on the project. If you want that kind of a value, dude, you have to actually generate value for your clients. So, get vested and, show those results. When you discuss, show those results.
So one thing that turns me off when I hire, I'm a freelancer. I hire freelancers as well. One thing that turns me off is there are some freelancers that walk in with a sense of entitlement.
Oh yes.
Oh, okay. I'm the best thing that happened to you since sliced bread was invented. That's the kind of attitude that I get from them. And the funny thing is, right now, for people who are actually good, and there are people who can pretend to be good, there are opportunities. Right? And the weird part is many times we can't make out, there are no labels on top, right? Saying I'm really good and I'm pretending that I'm good. You can't find out.
True.
Which is where work comes in. And for me, I look at 3 or 4 things. For me, the outlook is important. Can we both be aligned to the same end goal? If we are not aligned to the same end goal, then something's gonna go wrong, right? Because then you're not seeing the same end goal. You're just worried about your part. And if you're only worried about your part, then I don't want to do anything with you. The second thing is communication styles. For me, for better or for worse, I spent more than 12 years in the US, and even while I was working out of India, I worked with really international clientele where communication was really vital. I would talk about before the gig, before something started, when it started, while things were happening. And there are some people who have this approach that no news is good news. For me, everything is news. Everything is news. And everything is good news. Because I need to know what's happening. And time and again, I've been burned where delivery is due. And then half an hour before the delivery time or whenever it's due, people come throw something. So communication. So I look at communication styles. I look at attitudes, because if we have to work even if we have to work with somebody for a week, it makes a difference. You may not sit down and have a beer with them, but it still should be a happy experience for the two of you, right?
Yeah, and I believe that it's very important to ask questions. Unless until you've understood the project well enough, how to just go on doing it. Like sometimes I have had clients who have told me, last time I worked with a freelancer, all they said was that give me some keywords and I'll work with you. They never anything about it. And so we are giving you so much of information because you're asking for it. So it's so important to understand what your client wants to do, because it's not about just my intelligence,
right?
And it is not about their intelligence either. It has a lot to do with as you said, those collective goals. It's about that collective success. It cannot be about my intelligence, your intelligence, who's smarter, who's not, if I have the best thing happening to you or not. Right. It has to be about being on the same page. And there are clients who've told me, so guys, whoever is listening to it, it's not just about getting those keywords and just developing a piece out of it, probably using some internet or stuff. In fact, one of the things I do is not research competitions a lot. I don't do that. I just want to first of all learn from you, what do you think your company is doing. I just want to know your vision, your focus, your things. I don't do research on internet first thing. I will first of all listen everything. I will probably create my first draft without any influences, without any competition influences. And that is when then I go back to competition and check what have they done. So ask questions, people. Ask questions. Feel free to trouble them because they want to get troubled. If you think that you're troubling them a lot, no, just drag them in. I don't, as you said, what kind of clients you don't like to work with? I don't like to work with clients who just want the work done and they're not invested. I would like to work directly with the founder or the CEO. Talk to me, tell me about it. As I have only 24 hours. So I want to give my best to somebody who wants my best. So yeah, I get a little choosy when I'm like, been interviewed. And yes, it has happened, just like, Karuna, it has happened with me that I've really liked the project and I really want to do it, and we have already spoken maybe 10-15 hours already, discussed a lot of things, but I understand that you have budget constraints. I have done the projects willingly underpaid, because I really wanted to see what happens after we produce the results. Where does it go? Because sometimes as freelancers you want to get excited also. You want to see where it goes. Can we do this? Can we pull this off? So yeah, I mean, these things happen. So yeah, I mean, don't go about the keywords, ask questions, trouble people. That's what I will say.
So we tried a different format this time. On the previous webinars, I used to present a bit and then ask the other guest speakers to talk. But this time I wanted uninterrupted, awesome content that we've seen so far. I will pause for a couple of minutes, and then while I just summarize all the good stuff that you've said, we've had some questions coming in. I think it's about, we're coming to the close. So one, Garima is asking to do design freelancing. I think Karuna, this is possibly, you can best answer this. Which platforms would you recommend starting with and why?
Okay, so first of all, make your portfolio on Behance. It's www.behance.net. It's a global platform for all designers. And it's great because people from all over the world can see your work and get in touch with you. They can directly message you. Okay, that is one platform. Second is, don't underestimate the power of LinkedIn. Do not, because I did it initially for a couple of years, but it really, really helps with networking, because as a freelancer, I think networking is very, very important. So that is one. The other platform you should be on is Dribbble. Look that up. But these are the ones that I use, and they absolutely work for me. And also, if you're active on social media, which is Instagram, you will be surprised as to how much work you can get from there.
Right. And the funny thing about design stuff is practically most platforms today, from YouTube to Instagram to LinkedIn to Facebook, are all visual driven, right? They're all visual heavy, they're visual driven. And in fact, if something is not visually appealing, or if it doesn't meet a certain design ethos, that actually gets downranked. So from that perspective, putting out work out there is a terrific idea. And I've also seen another thing a lot of designers do. They take something very famous, let's say. Content writers do a great job of that on LinkedIn.
It's called topical stuff. Whatever's going on, they pick that and they create content around it. Yeah.
Correct. That is one. But otherwise, let's say you have a very famous logo, let's say the Apple logo. And then if you were to put your own personality into it, what would that look like? Right? Because right now, when people don't have work, what they're trying to create is, okay, what would it be if I were to do things? So they build that brand. So portfolio can be live work and also test work that you come up with. Like I said, there is no price tag on any of these things, right? Yes, somebody bought this or something was really live in a project. So that's the power. And you're right about LinkedIn as well. And people do. But the funny thing is, when it comes to content, so Pragya, is there a place for content?
Honestly, I work through Upwork, and designers I hire via Fiverr when I need designers. I just wanted to mention. Upwork, I actually started from where I got very good response. Some of the clients, I still work with them. Again, you have to put up your portfolios, right? I mean, you have to put up, if you have created some landing pages, some email sequences, these are kind of portfolios that you should have to, although I don't have one. Again, if you work for a certain, this is another important thing, that you work for a certain industry. If you're a lifestyle kind of writer, probably you wouldn't fit into technology writing. Because the jargons and everything it's a lot of work to jump between these. So yeah, I mean, you can probably, if you work for three, you work for lifestyle, you work for hospitality and travel, you can have individual things about. And one thing which I would probably clarify to everybody who wants to get into writing, content writing and copywriting are two separate things.
Right.
So copywriting, basically that kind of writing which sells. Content writing is a kind of writing which informs.
Right.
So, your blogs and your things like that, they are content writing. But when it's copywriting, it goes with a call to action. So these are landing pages. These are, even the website content will be a copywriting content. So, it's a big difference the way you do content writing and copywriting. It's a world of difference. Usually a lot of abuse happens when it's content writing, because I just know people who work for 50 paise a word, and they write content like that. Again, depends what kind of a writer you are. So I know people who can write 3,000 words a day. I'm not that one. I'm not that person. Even if I'm writing 100 words, I need an entire story in my head. It won't come out without that. So you need to understand what kind of a person you are. Are you somebody who can actually write long posts? Then you're good for content writing. If you're a copywriter, it is a lot about feeling and empathy and psychology and things like that. You want to understand your buyer, you want to understand your audience. That is when you produce those taglines, those headlines or subheads. So you need to understand, who are you? Are you somebody who's capable of writing long posts? Are you somebody who's interested in understanding buyer psychology or write things like that? That is when you decide if you want to be a content writer, copywriter. Both can pay good. Usually people think copywriting is a better gig, because you end up, you're basically working with a sales team, you get good money, no doubts. But even as a content writer, if you can write good content pieces, which are very actionable content, understand that when you are a copy person, you have to produce content which is, as much evergreen as possible. You have to create value with whatever you're writing, even if it's content writing. Is the content actionable? Whatever stories you're putting up, are they going to be beneficial, be useful, or is it just 1,000 words that you produced? So are you able to, draw in a point of view and opinion through your content? So these things are important. And yes, you have to understand where do you fall. And yes, some people can do both the things, which is amazing. So, yeah.
We've started getting questions on payments now. I wanted to do that as a last wrap-up cover. I know where you work through a platform like Upwork, there is a certain degree of protection that comes with it. I'm not sure how much of your work comes outside of Upwork. And even for you, Karuna, I don't know how much of your contracts are direct. And this ties in well, the question ties in well with what we are doing with Vouch. In our previous company, all we did was brand management for a lot of fashion brands. And the funny thing is, practically 90% of our payments were delayed. Platforms like Fiverr and Upwork have certain categories that go through them. And maybe about 2 to 3% of world's freelancing work goes through them, but the rest of it is direct. There is no, for instance, if you look at, let's say, voiceover still happens through these platforms, but freelancing is a huge, they've got lots of streams in it. And while design and graphic design have platforms like Behance and Dribbble, for all the others, there isn't really a platform. Even today, if you have to hire a bunch of people, there isn't one go-to place. These are in some sense, catch-all places where you end up going. So when you work direct, there's a contract which is 3.5 years old, which we've delivered, and we are still getting paid for it. It is a 3 lakh rupee contract. So about 40% of the payment is like an installment scheme. The client decided to do an EMI, themselves. And with Corona, they decided to put a moratorium on the payment as well. And then they said, okay, whether you're a bank or not, whether government guarantees or not, we'll put a moratorium. We still have money outstanding. And we realized that, this can't happen. And the funny thing is, when we started that project, the competition was offering 50% more. This person wanted us to work on it, although that was not something that we did, purely because of the relationship that we had. And so we we said yes to it. And we realized when we look back that, there's a lot of unprotected payments out there. There are delays, there's uncertainty. And a freelancer doesn't mean you have to live in that unpredictable, kind of a scenario. Let's bring some stability to it. So how to negotiate an advance and what not to do in payments? We'll wrap up with this.
Should I go first?
Yeah, anyone of you.
Pragya, do you want to take
please
over?
go on. Please go on.
Okay. Okay, so I have a very strict policy where I don't work without an advance. I don't start work till I don't see the advance coming in, and I generally work on a 50% advance basis. That's a rule. I just don't do the work if the advance doesn't come in. Because I've already burnt my hands before, like this is long back, but
Right.
I have started work, without an advance, and then clients, they're not really sure. Then they'll say, "Acha, abhi, we don't like it," so and they just disappear. They just
Right.
disappear.
Right.
So when you know that, a client is very serious when they actually give that 50% advance.
Right.
They're serious about the work, and then your time and your effort is not going to waste.
What about the remaining 50%?
I've never had an issue. It always comes.
Do you hold your work back or do something of that sort that helps you exercise control?
So you know what? This is where designers, I think, are in a little better position than writers, because we can at least hold back files. We can, provide very low resolution files. We can hold back the open file, source file. With writers, at least I have a lot of writer friends, and they sometimes complain about this, is that they cannot really protect their work in that sense. So they've had really bad experiences where, people, even after paying the 50% advance, and then once they see the work, eventually it's just a Word document, most times, and then they don't pay. Or they say that, I suggested this line, so this is technically my line, so I will not pay you for this. And they just switch words. They'll just switch words and they'll say, I came up with it, you didn't. So I'm not going to pay you. And then they can't really, I think Pragya will be able to put more light on this. This is what I have seen with a couple of my friends, but maybe you can tell us how you manage.
Pragya.
So, coming to me, I will say, so Upwork is pretty safe. They cut their fees 20% for the first $500. After that, it's 10%. So yes, they charge good money, but then there's a lot of branding they do for you and stuff. So it's safe. But when it's off Upwork, so most of the times, to be honest, I don't have this any system set, but I really think you need to vet the organization. You need to know. One of the things when a company starts working with you, and it's not just blogging, they will provide you with a lot of their resources, a lot of logins and this and that, and nobody usually will mess up when they have given you access to their key product, because you want to know what's happening inside. But then still, I think asking for an advance is a good thing to go ahead with. If you don't get paid for the rest of it, certainly a challenge that I as a copywriter, because when you give them a content, or that's pretty risky that you send them all and they don't give you the money. Somehow, apart from that one situation when I was totally scammed, I ended up working with good organizations where I did not really suffer these a lot. But yes, I think asking for an advance would be good. And usually I work on a monthly basis, so if it's a 3-month project, I keep on sending the invoices every fortnight or every 30 days, so for the number of hours I've worked. And usually it gets cleared, so it never happened to me that a 3 lakh thing and don't get it to 3 years. But then that is how it usually I do that. I keep sending them my hourly. So if I'm working on an 8-week project, I will probably send them invoice every 2 weeks, and I get paid accordingly. It's in the loop that is happening. I can stop the work midway, and trust me when I'm saying this, if you're a good freelancer, you're a catch. Everybody wants you because the liabilities are too less. You're not on their payroll. Every kind of risk is less. You work on a project basis, so in any case you're very affordable to them. So if you're a good freelancer, they don't want to lose you, because you are a catch by all means. I mean, this is something I totally have experienced, that they don't want to lose you for some money. So even if there are some disagreements, and yes, I've done refunds also. I have done refunds where I also know that I haven't worked properly on this particular assignment. I wasn't able to generate any value for them. And, you know, when the client has said that, okay, fine, you know, you spent your hours or something, and, you know, you just keep the money. This is also, I take it very much like, you know, to like see if it's, and I know I've done bad work. I know I have not done, I'm not justified. So yeah, I mean, I think you have to have some own, you know, you have to have some own principles, some rules, stick to them, know what you can do, know what you can't do. But most importantly, keep working on your skills, dude. Like, you know, you're a freelancer. They really are looking for somebody who can do it all. Keep working on your skills, keep improving on your skills, learn as much as you can from as many places as you can. If you are a writer, read as much as you can, and read your work also. You know, keep criticizing your work, keep trying to improve it, because that's the only way. You know, you can never arrive as such. It's a process. So keep doing, keep working. Try to become a valuable resource. So yeah, and this is what I'll say. Then your clients will not want to mess up with you because you're too important for them. So that's my way of dealing with it. But yeah, I don't really have a payment system still in place. I'm not very sure.
I agree with Pragya on this, that you can never stop learning. Like, you can never stop learning. I mean, even after 8 years, I don't think I know everything. I definitely don't. You have to keep upgrading. Like, you have to keep upgrading.
Yeah, I mean, you should have dedicated 1 hour just for reading. I mean, you know, so my, like, you know, for exercise warm up, my mind warm up is every day before I start writing, I have to read for an hour. I'll just sit and read any random thing. But yeah, I mean, you know, you need to know. I mean, you know, it cannot be when you think that I'm good enough now and I don't need to add anything. You never arrive. So, you know, just keep adding your skills. Try to be a good resource, and your clients will not cheat you.
For those of us who use voice turn-by-turn directions on our, you know, Google Maps, way back in the mid 2000s in the US, cars, rental cars, and all, you know, there used to be a personal GPS for a lot of people who haven't seen those GPS. Sort of weird. We used to joke around. Whenever you reach the destination, that GPS would announce you have arrived. And when we talk about learning, we keep joking, saying the only place you really arrive in life is in the GPS device. But otherwise, life is a long journey of learning. I wanted to share one story with you all before we wrap up. There is one question here which I think is outstanding. Somebody is asking, I think Gitanjali is asking, is there a platform where you advertise? Is it Gitanjali? Yeah, Gitanjali. I'm not sure what advertising you're referring to. If you're talking about advertising yourself as a freelancer, branding yourself as a freelancer, all platforms allow for some degree of advertising. LinkedIn, of course, you know, you can promote yourself, you can promote your work, and solicit. What is a good platform will depend on your stream and your particular work and your target segment. There's a nuance to it, but if it is visual, Instagram and LinkedIn, and to a certain extent Facebook will allow that as well. So how to promote your work. So we talked about talked about it a little bit. Build your portfolio, comment on others. So for instance, if you are a designer, represent something which is already popular out there with your own style. Appreciate others' work. Basically, you have to be at the scene of action, and then you have to network. So that's how you do it. So yesterday on my podcast, the episode is yet to be released. We had so I'll close with this. I had an entrepreneur, Ankit Garg, who is the CEO and co-founder of Wakefit, which India, one of largest India's selling mattresses. And he told me a story. And the thing is, I was asking him, when they started about 3.5 years ago, he was actually 5 years ago. Initially, when he began, he was selling maybe one mattress every 5 days. every 5 days. Today, when he began, today they sell 1,500 per day. 1,500 mattresses per day. And back then he used to have a 1,000 square feet factory where from his cook to the gardener, every one of them was juggling 2 or 3 responsibilities, and they were also acting as workers in the factory. Today they have 10 factories. So and they have received funding from a very large VC fund called Sequoia. And then I asked him, what was the journey? How did it take you from one mattress every 5 days or maybe every other week to 1,500? He said, a lot of people tend to have certain tactics, but for them, it boiled down to 2 things. They offered peace of mind. So a risk-free trial or a peace of mind where 99 days you are with the mattress, and if you don't like it, they take it back. That's one. So they offered implicit trust. The second thing that they did was, whenever a customer was impressed, initially he would on every Saturday, because he was doing a job and he was also running this, every Saturday he would make a list of about 7 or 8 customers that he sold the product to, and he would just show up at their place to take feedback. And if it was negative feedback, obviously he would act on it. And there's one funny thing that he said. One customer apparently told him the box should come with a how-to guide, how to use a mattress. And he was completely surprised. Who asked for a how-to guide for a mattress? And then the customer described to him what he was asking in the how-to guide. How often should I rotate it? Which side should it be? That sort of stuff. And whenever there was a positive review, they would do a short video and they would put it out. So I boiled it down to 2 things. One is he built trust by offering that peace of mind. And the second thing that he did was he built content and visibility and awareness. For instance, Karuna has done a great job branding herself. Pragya talked about portfolio. You have to be out there. You have to build visibility for yourself. So what we have done, so with Vouch, we realized that, and the beauty of it is, whenever something becomes a system, right, it actually multiplies our ability. It reduces the amount of energy that we have to put in to multiply our revenues, multiply our work, which is what we are trying to do. Right now, with the payment protection, there is a trust aspect, and soon there is going to be the multiplying your portfolio, getting it out there, featured freelancers. There are things that are coming. So look at a system, establish a system whereby you build trust. Initially it is informal, but eventually you need something which is more formal. So for instance, Upwork provides that, but for everything else where there are direct contracts, the idea is how can you create a structure, which is what we're on the path to building. I wanted to summarize with this. I made notes, what not to do. Don't be picky. Don't hesitate to put your terms up front. Don't, Pragya, this is something that you said. Put out a personality, put out what you're looking for, be specific. Don't say yes to everything. Don't focus only on money. Don't undercut. Don't just reduce the price. But if you truly believe in it, you can still accept it. There is something what Karuna said. Don't do work that you don't resonate with. Both of you have said this in different ways. Don't say yes to everything. And lastly, don't stay stagnant. Learn, pick up something new, and always add value to your clients and your work. Anything else that I missed out that you want to highlight?
I think I'll just say one last thing. This is for me because I faced this, and I think a lot of freelancers might face it. Is when you're working from home, you're in your comfort zone, and there are things are constantly happening in a house. She has kids, and I can understand how it must be. I'm not married, but I know, and even I, work is constantly happening in the house. People are screaming, the doorbell is ringing, the phone is ringing, newspaper is coming, doodh wala is, it's just like constantly going on. So, it can get a little difficult sometimes to focus for some people. I get asked this question a lot as to how do you sit in your room and work? Don't you feel like just sleeping on the bed all the time? Like, don't you just feel like passing out? And I mean, when I answer that, I don't. I literally don't feel like sleeping because I think you have to really enjoy, number one, what you do. Okay. And you have to have, a sort of routine. You have to discipline yourself a little bit, to have to do this work. So, I mean, it's, when you're not going to an office, you can just wake up at any hour you feel like. There's nobody to tell you anything.
But you'll still have a routine because creating good things and good stuff requires discipline. You may not be going to an office, but you will go into that zone, right? So that's take that time.
Exactly. So you have to have some, some routine. You have to have it.
I second Karuna on this because if you are not someone who can be self-motivated, don't get into freelancing.
You will not be self-motivated every
you have
single
to be
day.
Self-motivated. I mean, that is absolutely over there. You have to create your own disciplines. You have to, you have to keep, telling yourself that you have to, because what happens is that like, ठीक है 10 बजे start नहीं किया तो 11 बजे हो जाएगा. Okay, fine, ठीक है, lunch के बाद कर लेंगे, फिर रात हो गई तो early morning करेंगे. That thing never comes, and you always have an explanation that why you think that evening hours will be better, why after tea is better, why after lunch I'll start. You can always make up those stories. So yes, if you're not self-motivated, if you're not self-disciplined, trust me, freelancing is going to give you a tough time, and you are like, because you can't miss deadlines. And besides,
and I mean, you can, but it just reflects really badly.
And besides, freelancers are always approached when their company has messed up. Okay, so they've already spent a lot on with some agency, and now they are looking for some कोई तो मतलब जादू की छड़ी को मार के मेरा problem solve कर दे. So
they call you in the evening and they tell you, can I get this by tomorrow morning?
I mean, this is so, and this happens to us. So and also charge, like if this happens, you can always charge emergency charges and stuff. You can always do that. But then I mean, you have to be very self-motivated. I absolutely agree to this, because when you're not going to office and you're working from your bedroom.
But something, it actually applies to remote work as well, not just freelancing.
Yes.
And because you brought it up, we are way past our time, but we'll wrap up with this. In the year 2004 to, I think 2003 to 2008, I was in the US. I was working out of a couple of towns, but I was in Seattle, and a colleague of mine, she was in Buffalo. And our head of consulting, because we were both running two separate divisions, and we were the only two employees who were not in an office. Everyone else was in an office because the company didn't have offices, and our spouses worked in those cities. We were in that. And we used to do so much work, and I used to take calls at 2 in the night, 6 in the morning, manage Indian clients and Indian delivery. Our head of consulting, global head of consulting, used to say, Krishna and Anu are the two most highest performers in my team, living in the two most suicidal cities in all of America. So Seattle is known for its incessant rain, and Buffalo is known for its incessant snow. And they both have highest suicide rates in America. So you're absolutely right. The only reason we were able to do that was because we were internally motivated. And I mean, you are at least getting paid. For example, for my podcast, it is a labor of love, right? If I don't put out an episode, nobody's going to come and tell me, hey, dude, where is your next episode? My friends and some close people do ask me, but no random stranger shows up and then tells me, Acha, I was waiting for your next episode. Now the list of people who are getting into that, after hitting 30,000 listeners, people are growing there. People come and tell me, hey, I have so many reach outs on LinkedIn, and people say, hey, I'm waiting for the next episode. I'm waiting for the next episode. I said, fantastic, dude. I don't need your motivation, but I'll still take it because I'm just internally motivated to put it out. So with that fantastic, great session, it was a little unstructured because I wanted it to be a little natural. I'm sure a lot of people have had takeaways. We'll summarize this. We'll put this video out, and I'm going to put out a summary of the do's and don'ts as well. We'll have put it out. And until next time, wish the two of you a fantastic 2021. 2020, I'm sure, has been a mixed bag for most of us. And we'll see you soon in the freelancer universe.
Thank you so much for having me and Pragya. But thank you.
And all the very best for Vouch.
Thank you.
Yes.
We have
All
an
the
eye on
best.
you.
Yes, use it, promote it, and protect your pet.
We will.